Kadosh, Boker Tov. Yeah, Masechet Chagigah Daf Zayin Mudalef. Yeah, he comes and he says like this. My darash. What was the drasha of Rabbi Akiva? So Amar Rabbi Chana Amar Rabbi Yochanan says Rabbi Chana name Rabbi Yochanan. Ve'ata merevivot kodesh. What does that mean? Ve'ata merevivot kodesh. It says here, hu ot hu barevava shelo. It's a siman nikar that through this you could recognize the place of HaKadosh Baruch Hu between all of the malachim. And according to this siman, Rabbi Akiva was very careful not to look. Because basically we had to know, how do we know where the Shekhinah is? And he didn't look. Because remember, the other guy, he looked and he just went off. You understand? So it says, Rabbi Yavu Amar, Rabbi Yavu says, Dagul merevava. What does it mean, Dagul merevava? Right? Dugma hu barevava shelo. It's a dugma, right, in the revava. What does it mean? It's nikar. Okay? It's recognizable. And the Shakish says, Hashem tzavakot shemo. Right? Hashem tzavakot shemo. So he comes and he says, Adon hu batzava shelo. He's an Adon, he's nikar, that he is above all the tzivahot, all the malachim. And therefore, that's how. So basically, we were trying to find out, how does Rabbi Akiva know not to start coming and start looking towards the Shekhinah? That's why he wasn't damaged, right? So this is all the different psukim from where we know what he learned not to look at the Shekhinah. So he went into the Pardes, but he didn't look at the Shekhinah. Rabbi Chia bar Abba says, right, in the name of Yochanan, Lo baruach Hashem, ve'achar ruach ra'ash. Lo bera'ash Hashem, ve'achar ra'ash esh. Lo ba'esh Hashem, ve'achar esh. Kol demamad daka, v'nei Hashem over. Which means a siman. How do we know, right? How do we know? What we're trying to understand now is, Rabbi Chia bar Abba says in the name of Yochanan, Rabbi Akiva was doresh a pasuk in the story of Eliyahu Navi. Eliyahu Navi by Har Sinai over there, what happened? It says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to come and it's going to be a ruach gedolah. It's going to be a very strong wind. It's going to be chazak. It's going to be strong. Mefarek harim. It's going to destroy mountains. Meshabes laim, destroy. It's going to break rocks. Lifnei Hashem. Lo beruach Hashem, but Hashem is not in the ruach. After the ruach is going to come ra'ash, a lot of noise. Hashem is not in the ra'ash. Right? After the noise, fire. Hashem is not on the fire. Yeah? After the fire, called the mamadaka, there's silence. Yeah? And that's when V'nei Hashem over. That's when you see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to come out of the silence. That's when he comes. Not from the at the end. Right? The truth is, that's what they say also happens, right? Lavdila lefavdalo by Basar Vadam. At the beginning, there's all the trumpets and all the this, right? The king is coming, there's all the trumpets, and it gets louder and louder and louder. And all of a sudden, what happened? They're all looking at the king. All silence. Right? There's no more anymore of the. All the rash was at the beginning until then, and then that's it. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita. Shisha devarim ne'emru b'shadim. This Yaakov loved this Gemara. 6 things were said by demons. Yeah, 6 things were said by demons. Shlosha kemalachei hasharet. 3 things were said by malachei hasharet. U'shlosha kibnei adam. And 3 are like bnei adam. What does that mean? That means the shadim are compared in one hand like human beings, but they're compared on the other hand like malachim. So let's see. Shlosha kemalachei hasharet. There are 3 things which are like malachei hasharet. Yesh lahem knafayim kemalachei hasharet. They have knafayim. They have wings. Angels have wings. Shadim have wings. Tasin misov olam v'tzofo kemalachei hasharet. Number 2, they're able to fly from one part of the world to the next part of the world, just like malachei hasharet, which means mamash, they go flying. Yeah, they go from one place to another. Right? Yeah, no problem. Number 3, hem imrodim mashatid liot kemalachei hasharet. They know what's going to happen in the future. Yeah, many times they could know what's happening in the future. There's a whole question exactly why, but they know, right, what's happening in the future. So now says the Gemara, Yodim said, do you really think it's mamash the Yodim? That means they know what's going on? Ella, but rather, they don't actually know. They're not Nevi'im. Ella, but rather, right, he says, but rather, Shom'im, yeah, they listen to Me'achorei HaPargod, right? They listen to Me'achorei HaPargod, Kemalachei hasharet. Yeah, he comes and he says, they're going to listen Me'achorei HaPargod just like Malachei hasharet, and that's how they know. Because they don't know really the future, right? Because mamash, what's going on? They only know what's going on only because they listen and they overheard, right? They overhear different things. Okay. Now comes here and it says, right? Now we just said that the shadim are like in three ways like human beings. How are they like human beings? Number one, remember, malachim don't eat, but the shadim do eat. They eat and they drink. So that's like human beings. Number two, a malach does not procreate. A malach is a malach, Kaddish, there's nothing else. Hashem creates him, and then he'll destroy him or he'll create another one, and that's it. Right? Yeah, that's it, right? But here, no. Here, the shadim are like human beings. They procreate. They have children. Number three, metim k'bnei. They also die like bnei adam. What does it mean they die like bnei adam? Right? That means, right, they come and actually, they die. They actually die. There are 6 things which are said by bnei adam, by human beings. So now we're going to human beings. In 3 ways, human beings are compared to Malachei Asheret, and in 3 ways, the Malachim are compared to animals. In 3 ways, we are compared to Malachei Asheret. Yeshlem dat. We have dat. An animal has no dat. He doesn't know what he's doing. An animal. You ask an animal, "What are you doing?" He's not going to answer you. He has no dat. A human being, right? Okay, so it depends which ones. They're supposed to have dat. Yeah. So he says, "Malachim bekoma zegufa k'malachei Asheret." Number 2, they go walking. Right? Animals are always bent on 4. Right? Human beings, they go straight. Right? Like just like the Malachei Asheret. Number 3, right? We talk in Hebrew in like Malachei Asheret, which means that they do not speak at all. I don't know why it's supposed to specifically talk. You can't come another writers that they have koach hadibur. Lav davka da misaprim lashon kodesh. That's what we say. Wow, they spoke. Ruach memalaah is a human being. It's not the malach, right? It's not an animal. An animal does not. So now there's 3 things that they're like an animal. What? We eat and drink like animals. We procreate like animals. And motzi'im re'i, right? Also, we are going to be motzi'im re'i like behema. We do our necessities, right? Like also animals. So in all these 3 things, right? In all these 3 things, we come and we do this like the animals. So therefore, again, the human beings, 3 like Malachei Asheret, 3 like the animals, and the shadim, 3 like Malachei Asheret, and 3 like human beings. Okay, not like animals at all. Yeah. Now, says the Gemara, this is talking about where it says in the Mishnah, so we learned in the Mishnah that if you're going to look at these 4 things, it was fitting that a person should not come to this world. What was it? It was what was above the rakia, right? On top of the Chayot HaKodesh, what's below the world, right? What was in the past, what's in the future. So it says the Gemara analysis. I understand what's above, what's below, right? What's going to happen? Okay, right? We could understand that because Mala Achor is what's going to happen in the future. We don't know the future. We don't know the future. Nobody knows the future. We could think, we could guess. We don't know the future. But he says, Lifanim, but in the past, what's the big deal? Whatever happened, happened. So what's the problem then? So answers the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Elazar, Dam Nitzavai. It was Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Elazar both said, Mashal melech basar v'dam. It's a mashal to a melech, right? Basar v'dam, right? That he says, Lavadam. And he said to his servants, Benuli palterin gedolim. You're going to build for me a palterin gedolim, a very big armon, a very big castle, okay? Ala ashpa. It's going to be on top of the dumpster. Halchu banulo. They went and they built it for him. Now, from here, he's not going to want that they're going to start coming and talking about the ashpa, because what you're going to start. So imagine right now you had a dump, right? You had a dump, and on top of the dump, you built a huge palace. You want now that the king is going to mention the dump. He's not going to want to mention the dump. The dump is a dump. So because of that, he comes and he says that Kadosh Baruch Hu does not want to mention that which happened before the Briyat HaOlam. So whatever happened to before Briyat HaOlam, he doesn't want to mention. Okay, then it says, Kol shelo chas al kavod kono, anybody that's not going to be chas, he's not going to have mercy on the kavod of his master, right? It's ra'ui lo shelo ba'olam. So says the Gemara, what is this referring to over here? Okay, what does that mean? So he comes and he says, Maihi, what is it referring to? Rabbi Abba says, Zeh mistakel b'keshet. If somebody's going to come and they're going to look at a rainbow. Rav Yosef Amar, Zeh oved ha'over avera basetet. So if somebody's going to look at the keshet, at the rainbow, he doesn't have mercy on Hashem. Because what's happening? Hashem wants to destroy the world, but he doesn't really care. So because he doesn't really care, that's why he's looking. But 1 second, you don't realize that Hashem wants to destroy the world. So what are you coming and looking at the rainbow? Okay, that's
you look at it by accident.
No, but here we're saying that even if it's a mitzvah to look at it, to make a bracha, but you shouldn't start staring it. Remember, his takrut is as a looking deeper into something. Rav Yosef says somebody that doesn't have a baseter. Why baseter? So somebody that's going to come and he's going to do an avirah b'farhesia, it means that he doesn't care about human beings, and he doesn't care about Hashem. But if somebody's only going to do an avirah privately, it means that he's only afraid of human beings, but he doesn't care about Hashem. So because of that, somebody that's over avirah baseter, he says that is somebody that's lo chas al kvod kono. He doesn't care about the kavod of his master. Next, hamistakel b'keshet dichtiv, it says in the pasuk, kimarei hakeshet sheyeh b'anam b'yom hageshem, kimarei anog hasaviv, hu mareh demut kavod Hashem. So you see from here, the keshet is a demut of the kavod Hashem. So therefore, since it's not derech eretz to look at the kavod Hashem, so what are you looking at the keshet? If you're looking at the keshet, you're mizazel in kavod Hashem. Rav Yosef comes and he says, Zeh ha'over avirah baseter. This is somebody that he's doing an avirah baseter, right? K'Rabbi Yitzchak, just like Rabbi Yitzchak. The Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, what says Rabbi Yitzchak, kol ha'over avirah baseter kilu dochek raglei hashechina. Somebody does an avirah baseter, it's like he's pushing off the raglei hashechina. Shneimar, ko aman Hashem, this is the HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, the Shamayim kisiv ha'aretz adon olei. The Shamayim is my throne, and the Aretz and the land is Hadom Raglai, is for my feet. Okay, so therefore you see from here that there's no Shekhinah in the Aretz. So therefore, when you came, it's like he's pushing off the feet of HaKadosh Baruch Hu when he comes and he does an Avirah. So says the Gemara, any is it so? The Amar Rabbi La Hazaken, says Rabbi La Hazaken, Im ro'eh adam shitzor mitgaber alav, right? Yelech, right? L'makom shema kirinoto. He says if a person comes and he sees that the Yetzer Hara is mitgaber alav, what should he do? He should go to a place where they don't know him, and he should put on shchorim, right? And mitateh shchorim. So where do we learn this? We learned this in Moed Katan, if you remember. We learned this in Moed Katan, right? We learned this in Moed, right? Tetzai, right? I think it was Tetzai Mubet. No, what does it say over here? Moed Katan, Yudzayin Mubet. Yudzayin Mubet, right? Or Yudzayin Mudalef, actually. Yudzayin Mudalef. So he says, do whatever you want. Don't be mechalel shem shamayim v'eseh. So that's a stira. Are you telling me that you're supposed to do it privately or not? Says the Gemara, la kashya. It's not a question. Ha dematzi kaif leitzre. Here he could control his Yetzer Hara and not sin. Here you cannot control his Yetzer Hara. So therefore, a person like that, it's better that he should actually be choteh b'tzin'ah in order not to be mechalel shem shamayim, right, b'farhesia. Okay? That is Rabbi Yehuda bar Nachmani. Rabbi Yehuda bar Nachmani, he comes and he's making a dirasha. What's a dirasha? Meturgamane Resh Lakish. He was a meturgaman of Resh Lakish, and he says like this: anybody that comes and he looks at these three things, enav kahot, his eyes become weakened. Right? What are these three things? Bakeshet, and a rainbow. Banasi, if he looks at the nasi, and number three, bakoanim, when they're doing bika koanim. So a person comes and he looks at the koanim when they're doing bika koanim, or the nasi, or the keshet, it weakens their eyes. In the sea, looking at the Nasi. If you look at the Nasi, the prince.
No, these days we don't have today.
We're talking about the real Nasi. What?
Is the Nasi we have?
The keshet, it says in the pasuk, keshet be'anang b'yom geshem, hu d'mar d'mut kvod Hashem. Banasi, if somebody is going to be the Nasi again, haomeh b'rosh am Yisrael, is like looking at the Shekhinah d'chtiv, and atata me'odecha alav, you have to place your hold. That means when Moshe Rabbeinu was coming, he's saying, place your hold on top of him. Okay? He says, no. That's only going to be if they're looking at the Kohanim when they're doing it during the time of the Bet HaMikdash was Kayam, and they were in their Duchanan, and they used to bless with the name of the Shekhinah. And when they used to bless with the Shem HaMefurash, that's when it used to be, right? That means, according to this, it does not apply.
No, also according
right? According to this, it does not apply. Here it comes and it says that even when the Bet HaMikdash was not Kayam, it's still a suit to be Mistakel Kohanim, but for another reason. It says, because if not, they're going to be Masiach Dat. But it's not because of this reason. It's another reason. Okay, it's another reason.
Okay? Don't know that are Kohanim.
Doesn't matter. You're not allowed. Yeah, Darash Rabbi Yehuda bar Nachmani. Darash Rabbi Yehuda bar Nachmani to Resh Lakish. So another Darasha from Yehuda bar Nachmani that will talk about Resh Lakish. What does it mean in the pasuk? Al ta'aminu bere'a, al tiftechu be'aluf, mishochevet chekecha shemor pitche picha. What does that mean exactly? So he says, because again, it's somebody that's sleeping in your bosom, right? That's sleeping in your chest. You have to watch your mouth. What are you talking about here? Im yomru lecha yetzer hara. Are you listening? If the Yetzer Hara is going to tell you, Chato, sin, HaKadosh Baruch Hu mochel, don't worry about it. Be tranquil. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is he'll forgive you. Don't worry about it. Al Tamin. Don't believe him. Al Tamin Bere'a. Don't believe your friend. Who's the friend? In Re'al Yetzer Hara. Your friend, the Yetzer Hara. He's your best friend. Yeah, why? Because Kilu, he's a friend. Shneimar, Ki Yetzer Lev Adam Ra. Ve'en Aluf. Who's Aluf? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shneimar, Aluf Neurayeta. He says he's the Aluf. Right? Aluf is the princes. We know by, all the Alufs. Right? So he comes and he says, so don't believe him. So he says, Shema Tomar, who's going to testify? Who's going to testify? I'm at my house. I'm doing whatever I want. He may be. Right? The stones of his house and the beams of his house are going to testify against Shneimar. Again, we also learned this above as well. This was in Ta'anit, correct?
Yes.
Ta'anit.
Yes, we did.
Okay, in Ta'anit. V'chachamim omerim. And says the Chachamim, Nishmato shel adam meidabu. It's a neshama of the human being is going to testify about it. How do we know Shneimar? It says in Pasuk, Mishochevet, Mishochevet, Betecha. What does that mean? Mishochevet, Chekecha, Shemor Picha. Chachamim say Nishmato shel adam meidabu. It's the neshama of the human being that's going to be testifying against him. Shneimar, Mishochevet Chekecha, Shemor Pitcheficha. What does that mean? What is the thing which is shochevet bechakot shtam? What is the thing which is inside of the chek of the human being? It's a neshama. So it's obviously the neshama. Rabbi Zrika says, Shnei malachei Hashem melavin oto, hem meidim bo. It's the two malachei Hashem which they're actually accompanying him. They are the ones which are meidim bo. They are the ones which are going to testify. Shneimar, it says in the pasuk, Ki malacha v'tzav l'shmocha b'chol derechecha, v'yesh omrim v'tzav v'sei, evarav shel adam meidim bo. It's actually the evarim of the human being which are going to be testifying. Because it says in the pasuk, "V'atem adeh neum Hashem v'ani el." Okay, now we are in the Mishnah. Yosef ben Yoezer omer shelo lismoch. Says Yosef ben Yoezer that you're not supposed to come and you're not supposed to do semicha. What does that mean? Semicha on the korban. Yosef ben Yochanan says lismoch. You are allowed to do. You're allowed to do. You're obligated to do semicha on the korban on the day. Yeah, right there. Yeah, Yeshua ben Perachia says, "Shelo lismoch." Right? What does that mean? Shelo lismoch. Right? That you should not do semicha. Rabbi says you do the semicha on Yom Tov. So look how many opinions did you already have? You had Yosef ben Yoezer saying lo lismoch. Yosef ben Yochanan somech. Yeshua ben Perachia lo lismoch. Nitai Rabbi somech. Yehuda ben Tabai lo lismoch. Shimon ben Shatach lismoch. Shemaya omer lismoch. Avtalel omer shelo lismoch. Hillel Menachem, right now, this is Hillel Menachem. These two are the Rosh Sanhedrin. Lo nechleku, they didn't argue about this, right? Yatzam Menachem, right? Menachem came out from the Sanhedrin. Benichnas Shammai, and Shammai came in instead of Menachem. Shammai says shelo lismoch. Hillel Omer lismoch. Look how many back and forths of the opinions in the Mishnah. Do you do semicha on Yom Tov or don't you do semicha on Yom Tov? Okay. Harishonim hayu nisiim ushniim lahem avbetin. In every single one of these groups that we just mentioned until now, the first of the groups, meaning the first name of every single one, they were always the nisiim. They were always the nisiim. The one after is always going to be the avot beti. Is always going to be the av beti. Right, which is Yosef ben Yoezer, Yeshua ben Perachia, Yehuda ben Tamai, also the Shemaya v'Hillel, right? So those are the Nesiei Sanhedrin, and the other ones, which is Yosef ben Yochanan, Nitai Rabbi, Shimon ben Shatach, Avtalyon v'Shamai, were the Avot Betin. So you have Nesiim and Av Betin. Each one were two different groups. Okay, that was on to Zayin Amud Aleph on Mud Bet on the top. Here's the Gemara on to Zayin Amud Bet. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in a Braita. Shlosha mizugot harishonim she'amru shelo lismoch. There were three zugot that they said at the beginning that they do not do semicha. What is that? Yosef ben Yoezer, Yoshua ben Perachia, and Yehuda ben Tabai. Ushnai mi zugot acharonim, and the two of the last zugot, which they said to do semicha, which is Shemaya v'Hillel, hayu nesiim. Okay, then it says ushnaim lahem, the second one of each group, which is basically Yosef ben Yochanan, Nitai Rabbi, and Shimon ben Shatach, Avtalyon v'Shamai. They were avot bedin. These are the words that Rabbi mean. Chachamim omrim, Chachamim come and they say. Yehuda ben Tamai is Av Bedin. Yehuda ben Tamai was Av Bedin, but Shimon ben Shatach was the Nasi. Okay? All right, the opposite. Okay, now, says the Gemara, Man Tana lehad Tanu Rabbanan, who is the Tana that they taught in the Braita? Amar Yudah ben Tabai, says Yudah ben Tabai, Ere benechama, right? I'm going to see in the consolement, Im lo aragti et zomem, if I didn't come and I didn't kill an et zomem. Remember, we're talking about somebody that did an avirah that is chayav mita, and they said that he's going to be chayav, right, mita, through this testimony. And before they came and they testified, right, before they killed him before he became an et zomem, right? So what happens is that says the Gemara, leotzim liban shel tzedokim shayu omrim en edim zomim yanagil shereg nidon. Means according to them, right, the tzedokim, remember the Sadducees, they were always going against Bnei Yisrael. So these tzedokim, what they were doing was they were saying that the edim zomim are not going to be killed until the nidon is killed. Now we know that the nidon, the defendant, is killed. Now we know it's the exact opposite. Okay, so he says over here, Amalo Shimon ben Shatach, says Shimon ben Shatach. What are you talking about? I'm going to see in consolement if you didn't spill innocent blood. Why? Chachamim say, edim zomim are not going to be killed unless they're going to be both become ed zomem. That means until they're both not becoming ed zomem, they're not allowed. Right? The en lokim, that means you need both. That means only if one of them was an ed zomem, you still don't do nothing to them. They both have to become edim zomim in order to give them the punishment. That's the rule. The en lokim at she'izomu shnehem, and also the same halacha applies to makot. Makot is only going to be she'izomu shnehem. The en mishalmim mamon at she'izomu shnehem. The same halacha applies to the paying of the money. In all these cases, there's nothing done until it's both. Until it's both. So he says, miyad kibel elav Yehuda ben Tamai she'enu halacha lifnei shel shon. So from immediately, Yehuda ben Tamai, he said, from now on, he's never going to paskin halacha unless Shimon ben Shatach was there. Why? In order that he shouldn't make a mistake. Because he realized the big mistake was a very, very big mistake. Right? He killed an ed zomem, and there was only one. Kol yomam shel Yehuda ben Tabai. So every single day of the life of Yehuda ben Tabai, he was actually lying down on the kever of that one that he killed him, shelo kadin. And the voice was heard. They thought that it was actually the voice of the one that was killed. They thought it was his voice, right? Amal lahem, he says, no, kolihu, it's my voice. You should know, the next day he's going to die, and don't worry about it. You won't hear the voice anymore. There won't be a voice anymore. Says Ravacha, right, the son of Rava to Ravashi, there's two things. Either he's going to be mefayesuto, meaning that he'll go upstairs and he'll be able to appease him, right, because of what happened, or because he's going to be toveauto, he's going to take a justice against him, that he killed him wrongly. At the end of the day, that means even though it was a mistake, but he killed him wrongly. Okay? So he says, maniha, right? How do we know this braita? If you're going to tell me now, Rabbi Meir, right? Amar Shimon ben Shatach, that Shimon ben Shatach says, Av Betin, and Yehuda ben Tabai was the Nasi. Now we understand why we said, right? Now we understand that he was going to be Moreh Halacha in front of Shimon ben Shatach. Until that why? Because, and then he said, no, I'm not going to do it unless he's going to be the other way around, right? So he says, Elayim, but if you're going to tell me now like the rabbis, that the rabbis say Yehuda ben Tabai was the Av Betin, and Shimon ben Shatach was the Nasi, Av Betin lifnei Nasi, can the Av Betin paskin in front of the Nasi? The Av Betin can't paskin in front of the Nasi, right? Because the Av Betin is the Sheni to the Nasi. He's the second in command to the Nasi, and he's not allowed to paskin in front of him. So says the Gemara, lo, Maiki bel alav, right? The Kamar. What does it mean that he was mekabel alav? Litzterufe. What does it mean litzterufe? To mean mitztaref to the bedin. That's what he said. That he wasn't even going to be mitztaref when Shimon ben Shatach was not sitting with him. He wasn't even going to sit. He wasn't going to do anything. He wasn't going to be there. Okay, at all. That means he wasn't even, not even a tziruf, if he's not going to be with Shimon ben Shatach also as well. Okay, in the bedin. So what happened? Menachem left, and then Shammai came into his place. Where did he go? So he says, he comes and he says like this. He says, there was in the Mishnah. In the Mishnah we said, right, it was Menachem. Right? We saw Menachem in the Mishnah. Yeah, Yatza Menachem from the Sanhedrin, and Shammai came in his place in the Sanhedrin. So Lehechan Yatza, Abaye says, Yatza l'tabut ra'ah, which means he became a kofer. Because the fact that it says Yatza, what does it mean Yatza? He went off the path. So Rav Amar, he says, no, Yatza l'avodat hamelech, he went from the Sanhedrin to become, right, in the service of the kings. Tanya Miyachi, we also learned in a bright. He went out to Avodat HaMelech, and there was also with him 80 Zugot Talmidim, which they were in Bigdei Malchut. So Amar Bishimon Rabba Rabbi Yochanan says to Shimon Rabba Rabbi Yochanan, Olam al Te'eh Shevut Kala Beinecha, right? A shvut, which is an isur d'Rabbanan, should never be light in your eyes. Share smicha en ala mishum shvut. The only prohibition against smicha, leaning on an animal, is only d'Rabbanan. Look how many generations you had Gedolei Ador arguing one on another. You had one and the other, one, and 2 generations. It's all d'Rabbanan. So says the Gemara Pshita, obviously. I'm saying obviously it's only going to be d'Rabbanan. So he said, no, shvut mitzvah yitzichaleh. We needed this to teach us that even though it's a mitzvah to do smicha, it's still the rabbis made a decree not to do it because of the gezerah. So says the Gemara Pshita. It's also obvious. So he says, no, la puke miman de amar bismicha gufa plige. This comes to exclude that which we said, that they were actually arguing in the smicha in itself, right? Which was Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, that he says that they were arguing in the obligation of smicha in the shalmei chova. Okay, that he says over here, kamashmalam beshutu duplige. That the entire machloket was to do the shvut of mitzvah, which means when Rabbi Yochanan comes and he says it's only going to be a shvut of mitzvah, yisu shvut. So that's what he's coming and saying. He's coming to say that the machloket was, did the rabbis permit an yisu shvut of using an animal for the tzorach of the mitzvah or not? That was the machloket between them. So Amar Rabbi Merchama said, Merchama Shema Mina, we learn from here, semicha bechol kocho bayim. We learn from here that when they do semicha, it wasn't just that they put the hand on top of the animal. They have to mamash put the entire leaning with the entire thing. Why? Because if you're going to tell me, so what's the isur then to do semicha? At the end of the day, if you're just mamash putting your hand on top, you didn't do anything. No. It's because you're leaning on an animal, and you're not allowed to lean on an animal in your Shabbat or Yom Tov. So that's the D'Rabbanan. So because of that, it has to be mamash bechol kocho. So says the Gemara, Meitvei, we asked the question, Tabela b'nei Yisrael, right? We're going to speak to b'nei Yisrael v'samach. So then it says v'samach. What does that mean? V'samach b'nei Yisrael somchin. So it's mashma that only b'nei Yisrael somchin, but not benot Yisrael. That means benot Yisrael do not do the simcha. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Shimon say, benot Yisrael somchot reshut. Benot Yisrael, they're allowed to. Meaning, if they really wanted to, they're allowed to. Amar Rabbi Yosef says, Rabbi Yosef, Sach li Abalazar, Pam achat haya lanu egel shezivchei shlamim. And once happened that we had an egel of zivchei shlamim, and we know lezrat nashim, v'samchu alav nashim. So the women came and they did it. Not because there is semicha benashim, ela kedei la'asot na'achat ruach lanashim. It was in order that you should make them feel good. The what that they did a mitzvah. Meaning we want, yeah, that means we not Israel. We let them do it in order that what that they should feel good that they did a mitzvah. So that's what we did. Not because they have to. That they feel that they did a mitzvah. Says the Gemara, if you're going to tell me now, smicha bechol kocho ba'inan, mishum nachat ruach denashim avdina avodah b'kochim, that means avodah b'kochim. You're not allowed to do an avodah, a service in kochim, which means that right now, if you're leaning on an animal, that means you're doing an avodah in an animal. You cannot come and do an avodah in kochim, right? Because you want to make nachat ruach for the women. At the end of the day, okay, you want to make them feel good, make them feel good. They cannot come and start doing an avodah. You can't start coming doing something which is wrong. Ela lav shmaniya, when it comes to teach you, you do not need all your strength to do the smicha. So that's what the Gemara says. So that means you don't need it. So says the Gemara, no. Really, you do need bechol kocho. You need with all your might. But they told the women, don't do it heavily. Just put your hands on top. So it comes out that way they didn't do it. They didn't do avodah in the kochim, but they didn't do the mitzvah semicha either. But they were doing it like semicha. Why? To make them feel good. That was really bad. The women did not do the mitzvah 100% because the real mitzvah is mamash semicha bechol kocho, right? If they would have done semicha bechol kocho, they're doing avodah b'kochim. They're not allowed to do that. So they did it lightly on top. So that they didn't do avodah b'kochim. That's not semicha. You're right. It's not semicha. Akilu, zama. No, they did it. Akilu. That they're doing it like that. They're doing it, right? So he says, Yachiv. So no means semicha nashim. It's not smicha at all. Not because there's no smicha by women. It's not a smicha at all. So Rabbi Yami comes and says, Chada, you're right. There are two things. Chada, there's no smicha at all. You're right. The way that it was done, there was no smicha at all. Okay? Ve'od, and another reason, in order to make nachat ruach for the women. So Papa says, Shmamina, we learn from here, Tzedadim asurim, that even the sides of the animal, you're not allowed to use the sides of the animal on Shabbat and Yom Tov. Right? That means even though we just said you're not allowed to use the animal on Shabbat and Yom Tov, also the sides, which means something that comes from the sides, you're not allowed to. If you're going to tell me now that the sides, you're allowed to use the sides of the animal, lismoch, so do semicha. Why? Because you should be able to do it, because the head of the animal is not we usually don't use it. That's considered like the tzidei behema. So therefore, if you don't use the head and you're doing the simicha on the head, so there shouldn't be any problem. So he actually tells you that tzadin is also surim, because if the head is considered tzadin, because you don't use the head of an animal, nobody comes and uses the head. The head is the head, you understand? So he says, so therefore, obviously, tzadin is also going to be a surim on Shabbat and Yom Tov. Avashi says no. Afilu tema tzadin mutar. Even if you're going to tell me that you're allowed to use the tzidei behema on Yom Tov, still kol de vehadi gaba kebegaba dami. Any ever of the animal which is equal to the same level as the animal is the same thing. So therefore here, since the head is at the same height as the back of the back part of the animal, the neck of the animal, so therefore it's all considered going to be the same halacha, and therefore he's coming and saying that even if you're going to tell me it's tzaddim is going to be mutar, here it's going to be a surim v'shimush, just like the rest of the animal is going to be a sur v'shimush.